Okay, the name is Bill Wren. You said job title?
Or
Specialist?
yeah, or where you're calling, or your organization, I guess.
Yeah, Bill Wren, Special Assistant to the Superintendent, University of Texas at Austin McDonald Observatory.
Thank you for joining us today on the Crude Life Media Network. And we've got a kind of a neat story, in my opinion. I like these stories that kind of think outside the box when it comes to oil and gas and some solutions to problems and identifying some different things. And I came across a story, I think it was on space.com or something like that. And it had to do with the University of Texas, Austin's McDonald Observatory collaborating with the Permian Basin Petroleum Association and the Texas Oil and Gas Association to reduce light shining from the sky from the drilling rigs and the flaring and etc. So talk to me a little bit just about that collaboration, how it came about, and what you guys are doing.
Well, okay, you'd have to know a little bit about the geography here in terms of where the observatory is located. We're in the heart of the Davis Mountains in far west Texas, about 3 hours east of El Paso, 3 hours from the Big Bend National Park, 3 hours from Midland, Odessa, which is at the heart of the Permian Basin. So we're in the middle of nowhere, but the Permian extends down to the mountains, and maybe even under the mountains. There are some wildcatters that are drilling in the mountains proper, going through a few thousand feet of igneous rock to try and get to sedimentary layers. We haven't seen much production close by yet, but we're kind of on the southwestern edge of the Permian, where most of the activity, exploration, production activity, has been going on. Well, it picked up big time, I guess, around 2008 or so, with the advances in horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing. And around 2010 or so, we began to see that the mountains just to our north were beginning to be silhouetted against the glow in the sky down low on the horizon. And we immediately reached out to the oil and gas industry to see if we could help them keep their lights on the ground and out of the sky. It was for the first year or two, it was primarily, we didn't have anybody really connected with the industry, any contacts or inside, didn't have our foot in the door. So I spent a great deal of time visiting an alphabet soup of oil and gas trade conventions, from the IADC and the AADE and the NAPE and TIPRO and you name it. All the major trade organizations in oil and gas, and I would, if I could get myself in the door at these conventions, because the registration fees were usually pretty steep, I would just walk the exhibit hall with my little laptop computer and introduce myself as an astronomer from McDonald Observatory, and people would look at me kind of strange, and you may wonder what I'm doing here. Can I show you some pictures? And whip out my laptop and gather a small group around, and just did that for the longest time. And people's response when I talked about alternatives to their traditional forms of lighting, they scratched their heads and said, well, that makes sense, but it just really never occurred to us, Then I was introduced to the president of I was introduced to the president of Pioneer Energy Services, which is an oil and gas service company that does a lot of drilling and is hired by many of the major operators. And it just so turns out that he and his wife have a ranch not too far from us, down by the Big Bend National Park, and he would wax poetically about being able to see the stars of the Milky Way from horizon to horizon, and said that he thought it was worth protecting, and gave us access to his fleet of drilling rigs, and said, see what you can do with the lighting. So we, well, first day on the rig, I had the driller touring me around, and he pointed out a rag that he'd stuffed up into this explosion-proof light, the wire mesh that surrounds the glass globe, because the light was directly in his line of sight from his workstation, and the glare was blinding him, so he stuck a rag up in there. And that's when I knew we could do better, and we identified the make and model of the light fixture, and sure enough, the manufacturer offers optional shielding, which Pioneer Energy purchased and installed. The light that was being wasted upward into the sky was reflected back down onto the working surface, providing more light there, and there was much less glare in the driller's eyes, so they shielded all the old legacy lights, the old metal halide lights on that drilling rig. When the price dropped out of the bottom of oil some years back, that rig got auctioned off, and they added new rigs to their fleet, and they incorporated suggestions on our part, recommendations for the not particular makes and models of fixtures, but the form factor, the kinds of light fixtures to use on their new rigs, and it turned out really nice. They like it. So that and several other demonstration projects that we did in the field. Well, I could back up and just say that from that example, from that experience on the working with Pioneer Energy and their drilling rigs, we wrote a paper that we presented to, I think it was IADC. No, it was SPE. Society of Petroleum Engineers Conference on Health, Environment, and Safety up in Denver back in March of 2015, I think. And one of the moderators of that talk that I gave worked for Cimarex Corporation, who then told me I should check out the lighting at one of their major gas separation plants, which I did. The lighting was basically pole-mounted floodlights that were aimed up at high angles and lighting up the surrounding countryside. We asked them just as a demonstration that if they didn't like it, put it back the way it was, but if they would not replace the light fixtures or shield them, but just get a bucket truck and a wrench and get up and re-aim the fixtures straight down. And what they found was that all the light that had been shining into the sky and lighting up the surrounding desert was now on their work site, and there was much less glare in their workers' eyes. And they left it the way it was. So we had several successful demonstrations of dark sky friendly lighting in the oil field that also provided better visibility for the workers on site. And with that information in hand, we were invited to attend a meeting of the Railroad Commission with TIPRO, Texas Independent Producers and Royalty Owners. Think of landowners with oil leases who have a lot of clout. And anyway, I gave a presentation to that group, to TIPRO, and they then arranged a presentation with the Railroad Commission in Texas, who is the regulatory authority for oil and gas in the state of Texas. And see, I'm a state employee. I work for the University of Texas, and I can't approach an elected official like the Railroad Commission and talk to them about any kind of regulation. So I was very fortunate that the TIPRO people said, well, shoot, we'll ask for a meeting and invite you for educational purposes, which they did. The Railroad Commission subsequently issued a notice to operators that basically, well, I should also tell you that the 7 counties surrounding the observatory, and if you look at the map, the counties in West Texas are huge. And the 7 counties surrounding McDonald Observatory constitute 28,000 square miles, 18 million acres. And each of those 7 counties has an outdoor lighting ordinance. So the first one was adopted back in 1978. So we have the largest contiguous land mass around us whose skies overhead are protected by law. But with the boom in horizontal drilling, a lot of activity picked up, and I don't believe any of the operators were aware that there were outdoor lighting ordinances in these counties. I don't believe that the Railroad Commission, who let the permits, were aware that there were outdoor lighting ordinances in these counties. So we've been playing a game of education and awareness, just informing them and showing them what better modernized lighting looks like. And one company in particular, who's a major player here in the Permian Basin, is Apache Corporation. They have installed a good half a dozen new permanent facilities in the area north of us, about 30 miles, and employed our recommendations in terms of lighting with proper color temperature, kind of a soft white as opposed to the hot blue white light, fully shielded, lower wattage LEDs, and they love it. They're sold. Now we only have a few hundred more companies to go, So I've been talking nonstop for about 10 minutes now. You may have a question or two. I don't know.
Yeah, I got a couple, but that's good. I mean, you definitely know what you're talking about. You're passionate about it, and it's kind of interesting how you had to go the grassroots way. And all I could think of is that first year, you were probably the crazy guy that just wanted to watch stars, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yes, that's fair to say. But what's interesting is that, I mean, for example, Apache Corporation is exploring north of us in an area they call the Alpine High Play, which was announced a couple of years ago, where they discovered all these reserves. But it's so close to the observatory that if they lit their activities in the traditional way, we would be in a world of hurt as far as our dark skies go. They required that any drilling contractors that they hired use the recommendations. I think the article probably refers to the fact that we worked with the Permian Basin Petroleum Association, Texas Oil and Gas Association, to draft a set of recommended lighting practices, and Apache Corporation gifted us time in their state-of-the-art AV studio to produce a complimentary training video to go along with the written document, because it's such a visual topic. You can talk to people about it, you can read about it, but until you really see what the good lighting looks like, it often doesn't register. So,
well, and that's why I felt it was important that you explained where you were located and how this came about, because I used to live in the country, and now I live in the city again, and I miss the non-light pollution. I mean, there's a big difference between looking at stars and I'm a stargazer at night. It's a way my son and I kind of talk about some of the old mythology, and it's fun from that bonding standpoint. So I'm very aware of it. So I find it interesting that the path that you took in order to get to where you're at, to where enough of the oil and gas companies said, you know what, yeah, this is legit. Whether you call it light pollution or light redirection or light recycling. Is this what you're doing? Are you redirecting the light? Or are you recycling the light?
In many cases, that is the situation. We can re-aim a lot of lights. We can shield other lights to direct the light where you want it to go. But in so many cases, it really makes more sense just to simply replace the lights. And I refer to it as modernizing.
Okay.
I mean, everybody is modernizing to the LED. I mean, it draws just 20% of the power that the old legacy lighting does. So there's money to be saved. Of course, the amount of money that's being spent by the oil and gas industry lighting their nighttime activities is minuscule compared to their budgets. So that's not really a big incentive for them. That sells for the local communities, because we're also very active with residents and businesses and municipalities in the area to help them do their lighting well also. But for the oil and gas people, what has really struck them is the improvement in visibility. I've got testimonials now from guys in the field. Actually, I'm putting a presentation together to do this Friday, and I can just one really nice example. Let's see. I need to open that one. I think that's it. Excuse me while I bring up a file here.
No, that's okay. I'll just take a quick second here.
I just want to give you a feel for what these guys are telling us, because I mean, when Apache installed these modern LED, fully shielded, low color temperature lights on a new tank battery just north of us, it's like, wow, that's great. It's wonderful from a dark sky point of view, but how is it for you? That's what I wanted to know. That's what I wanted to know, because if we were trying to encourage them to adopt lighting practices that made them feel less safe, then we were going to be in a world of trouble. But here's a quote from the vice president in charge of operations at Apache. From a safety perspective, we used to believe the more lighting we had, the safer the location. In fact, we worked to ensure lighting was plentiful. Through education and our work with the observatory, however, we have learned that smart lighting can actually reduce the need for numerous and excessive light sources while still ensuring a safe location for our workers. The Railroad Commission put out a notice to the operators, as I suggested, and their summary sentence says the solutions can be simple and cost-effective and can actually improve nighttime visibility and increase worker safety. So that is the selling point for oil and gas from our point of view. I mean, yes, down the road they can save some money by lighting with LEDs and not wasting so much light into the sky and the surrounding countryside. But it's visibility on the site at night is what we've been able to show them is improving visibility, and that goes a long, long way. I mean, somebody gets hurt in the oil field, and it puts a damper on things.
So these are mostly just kind of modernize the lighting, you're saying, and from your perspective, you guys are more interested in just the science behind it and the impact. Like, you don't really care as far as the industry in terms of who's making money on the lights and the installation and that whole thing.
We're an astronomical research facility. It's a satellite campus of the University of Texas at Austin. We're 444 miles west of Austin, where it's nice and dark. Historically, this has been one of the darkest locations for any major observatory in the world, and it's still extremely dark. That's a very important thing to point out. It is that the glow, the increase in sky glow that we're seeing is down very low on the horizon to our north. We're not pointing our telescopes down to look, through the trees. We're looking high overhead. The sky high overhead is still extremely dark.
So the work through this, and that's why I think it's kind of interesting that you guys don't have a dog in this hunt except for the end result. And
right.
But are you seeing an industry, a little micro industry, kind of open up? If Apache's making changes, I imagine other people are. You said that you guys are trying to get the word out there, and so shows like this and other media outlets, whether it be traditional or the new digital side of things. I mean, I imagine people are going to start doing this. So are there companies that are specializing in this, or do you know anything about that?
There are some companies. First off, there are some that are advertising light fixtures as dark sky friendly, or some term similar to that, that in fact are not. They're just using it as a selling point. I've had several people send me photographs of brand new lights on a brand new drilling rig. They're so proud they've got these dark sky friendly lights, and they're aimed up at high angles and shining a lot of light into the sky. And I write them back and they say, but they're LEDs, they've got to be dark sky friendly. So there's just that's why I say it's such a visual topic. We've got to show them what light distribution means. Where does the light go when it leaves the fixture? And where do you want it to go? You don't want it to go directly into your eye. That blinds you. You want it to go in your work environment, and you don't want to waste it into the sky or the surrounding area. So, our only dog in this hunt is to keep the skies dark for astronomy. That's it, period. We have no position whatsoever on fossil fuel industry or anything like that. We are no political positions. We're just trying to do science.
We're just trying to look at the stars.
We have the largest telescope in North America here, one of the largest telescopes in the world. We're looking at objects out toward the edge of the observable universe, 12, 13 billion light years away, gathering maybe a couple of dozen photons per hour. Okay, so as the sky brightens, our exposure times go longer, and it costs more in terms of telescope time, and those are our concerns.
I love it though. It's like keeping an eye on, instead of the reclamation of the ground, it's like reclamation or ecological footprint protecting of the sky.
Yeah, good. That's a good way of putting it. And a nice thing about this is that from the industry's point of view, this is simple. I mean, this is an easy fix, and it is in their interest. It does improve visibility on their nighttime activities, but it's, they've got concerns over land and water and air quality and lesser prairie chickens and, all these environmental things that they're being hit with. And the dark sky thing is, they see that as eminently solvable and an opportunity to get some press, some positive press, which we are more than happy to help them do.
Well, what's the next step? Let's say somebody listening is in charge of replacing light bulbs at a site, that sort of thing. What's the next step that you recommend?
Well, we're just kind of plodding along a step at a time. I mean, the next thing long term is to go beyond recommended practices and see an organization like the API adopt a set of standards, or OSHA adopt a set of standards, but we've got a long way to go to get there. Right now, what we're trying to do is work with the major operators that are exploring and producing in our vicinity to identify an employee in their organization who will be the go-to person on lighting, and then get these people trained and educated so they understand what the dark sky friendly lighting looks like, so they can, when they step foot on an oil rig or a production site, in addition to the 101 other things they have to pay attention to, they will also evaluate the lighting and make necessary corrections, and they can always count on us to help them, in any way that we can. So that's kind of where we're going, is just to get more companies on board. Like I said, we've got one sold and just a few hundred more to deal with. But certainly we would like to see major players like ExxonMobil and Chevron and ConocoPhillips, and if we could get some of the major corporations, major operators on board, then we'd be well ahead of the game and well on the road to getting things. We can reverse it. I mean, we can. We basically have to see that any new lighting that goes in that 7-county region I referred to earlier, we have to ensure that any new lighting is going to conform with the county ordinances and the dark sky friendly practices, and then all the thousands of existing installations, permanent installations that are already out there, are going to have to be modernized. The lighting will have to be modernized. Now that's a big bite, but it can be done. I mean, there's nothing to stop it. And if we can demonstrate to their satisfaction, to the industry satisfaction, that it is in their interest to adopt these types of lighting practices because it improves visibility, it increases worker safety, then we got something that I'd like to emphasize and get across. Because when I go to speak, I do a lot of public speaking, and any opportunity I get, I'll come and talk to people about this and show them some slides and do some lighting demos and what have you. And I find that often there is a preconceived idea as to what it is we're trying to accomplish. People hear I'm an astronomer, I'm coming from McDonald Observatory, I want to talk about dark skies, I want to talk about outdoor lighting, and often they jump to the conclusion that I am coming to try and talk them into turning their lights off and leaving them in the dark. That is the first major obstacle that I have to overcome when I talk to people, is just that misperception that we are somehow anti-light. We are not against lighting at night. We are in favor of good lighting at night. So we are promoting something positive. We're offering improvements in nighttime visibility. So this is not an anti-light campaign. It's not about dark ground, it's about dark skies. So that's probably the cutting down to the chase. That is the mission that I'm on.